Greetings, Mark Garang here, publisher of the Conway Daily Sun, and today's another installment of our local politics run-up to the April 9th election. You can check out all these interviews on the Conway Daily Sun website. Just scroll down, you'll see the thumbnail, and a lot of these are being broadcast on Valley Vision. Today, we have Budget Committee members Stacy San and Jim LeFebrve. Not LeFebrve. I just learned today that the actual pronunciation is LeFebrve.
Correct. Thank you.
Jim, Stacy,
Hi,
how are we
Mark.
doing?
Good.
Good, good. So just a little bit of a preview. Stacy, you're not running again. Your term expires in the Budget Committee, right?
Correct.
And you're not running for anything. Are you retiring?
Kind of. I mean, I'm just involved in so many things, and I found that I want to give a little more attention to my work, and I want to give a little more, do a few other things. I've been doing a lot of music with the high school and community band and with local theater.
So nothing elected for this time coming
No,
up, obviously.
Yeah, and probably not for a while. Keep my eye on things, and if there's committees or something that maybe need some help, I'll see if
because you've been selectmen and you've been everything. And Jim, you have another year or so?
I have a year left on the Budget Committee. I've been on the Budget Committee since Stacy was the chairman.
Okay, which was?
Goes back to 1990 something.
Oh, wow.
My gosh,
Do you plan on running again next year?
Probably not, because my wife and I will probably be moving to Texas in the next year to 18 months.
Moving?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Well, that's going to be too bad. The community's going to miss you.
Well, I'm with the American Legion. I'm a commander of American Legion post. I'm a statewide officer on a state organization. And I'm busy around town, so it's time to do other things, though, too. As you said, it's neither of us are getting any younger, and it may very well be time for younger people to be willing to step up and do something to help the community.
All right, very good. Well, that's the interesting stuff. Now let's get to the really not interesting stuff and talk about the budget. Now, and I should say that running for the Budget Committee is Ryan Fail and Bob Drinkhall, who's on the Budget Committee, right?
Correct.
And you still have a couple of vacant seats.
Right.
Which leads before
write-ins.
Huh?
They could be write-ins.
They could be write-ins, yes. So before we get into the budget, let's just, since we're talking about vacant seats, let's talk about the Charter Commission for a minute. And I'm on the Charter Commission, full disclosure, and a proponent of it, and so is Stacy.
So am I.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we got 2 against you, Jim.
That is correct.
And I'm going to assume that, and I know Stacy is for it, and one of the things that affects, or the changes in the new charter would be we're going to decrease the number of Budget Committee members from what? 17 to 13?
Potentially 17 now, actually 16 because Redstone's with Senator Conway. So potentially 16 now to, we're looking to go to 13.
And the reason for that?
The biggest reason that the committee discussed was that there's never like a full slate of candidates running for the office. And the fire districts are merging. So that's going to automatically reduce the numbers. I mean, you can fill them with at-large seats, which is what we plan on doing if we go down to 13. But it just seems like there's always a vacancy. There's never a full slate, so people aren't getting a real choice of people that, so we can get somebody elected with write-ins of 1 or 2 sometimes.
All right.
RSA 32, the one that we're functioning under, we have 12 elected and 1 appointed for each of the precincts, to include a representative from the select board and the school board. So that makes it to the 16 that you were just referring currently. And you drop the total number to 13 and strip out the precincts, that will reduce at least 2 more. So that will bring us down to the 13 eventually.
Yeah, but again, this election's a perfect example. There was a 1-year seat up that I don't know if anybody is running for that. There's 4 for the 3-year seats, and we have 2 candidates for that.
Actually, I don't believe there was a 1-year seat this year.
Okay, maybe no 1 year this year.
Kit Hickey was replaced by Steve.
But she ended this year, right?
She ended this year.
But there are 4 openings, plus the representatives from the fire districts. 2 of them have not set representatives for the 3 years I've been on the board. This term. I was selectman's rep before, and we did have representatives some of those years. And we have 2 candidates, and one who, good for him for stepping up and, trying to help the town, but it's pronounced File, I learned yesterday, Mr. File has no experience in town office, and, and so again, I thank you for stepping up, but.
Well, everybody's got to start somewhere, and starting, and also, Ryan is as we've witnessed at the deliberative, he's very outspoken and seems to be very knowledgeable.
And he did show up at the budget committee meeting several times in the last few sessions.
Yeah.
He was there last night,
Right.
and I believe one other session after he announced he was running. So,
so
you start off with, that's how I started off. I was looking at one point running elsewhere, but I decided not to. But,
so I know, Jim, you have reasons that you're not supporting the Charter Commission, which we don't need to get into since we're talking about the budget, but what about the idea of just reducing the number of budget committee members?
I think that is appropriate given the fact that we have the precincts issue. In general terms, 17, I'm a member of another board of directors with 17 people on it, and it is a difficult number. 13 is more manageable and for the leadership to handle properly.
All right, then, Stacy, I think we're going to take that as an endorsement of the new charter. Thank you, Jim.
An endorsement of part of the new charter. I disagree, as we are. Since
you don't like the $2 million bond.
I have a problem with the $2 million bonding ability every year. That would raise the taxes for this year, for example. When the select board put the $2 million against the budget, that dropped it from 1080 to 1016 or 1012. It was a considerable droppage, 62 cents plus per thousand against the tax rate. For a $300,000 house, that's a savings of approximately $186 a year.
All right, but the idea of we can get into it a little bit, but the idea of giving the authority of the council to spend $2 million isn't that they're going to spend the $2 million. It's only from basically emergency situations or opportunities, and it's got to go to a public hearing and 5 out of the 7 councilors. So it's, and the charter's argument is that the town and the school returns a surplus every year anyway of money that's been approved and could be spent, and they don't because they're responsible. So to think that councils are all of a sudden going to start spending money willy-nilly seems to be a little bit far-fetched.
My argument against that is a simple one. If you have a review process set up, as we discussed previous to starting the session, with the DRA and the budget committee, that's outside people looking at what the 5 to 7 person council would be doing. And that's a good check on people spending money willy-nilly, if you will. I recognize that may be an unpopular circumstance around this table, but I am concerned about that. And that is a job of the budget committee to be involved in the review of additional funding.
And that's a legitimate point. The last thing, Stacy, and I know you could say this as well as I, but the whole charter, if it's passed, which the charter itself is badly outdated and needs to be passed, that could change. Like a special article next year could reduce that $2 million to nothing. But okay, so we'll leave it at that. Okay, let's go on to the.
Can I also
go ahead,
bring
Stacy.
up the point too that if we don't pass the charter, and this is something that really hasn't been discussed enough, we can't just make these changes easily in the existing charter. The selectmen can propose them, but they barely get the work done they do now. So, in my opinion, it's is that the only way to do it is again have the special elections, get the charter commission such. So let's do it. Let's do it. Let's pass it. Let's get these good ideas on the table. And if they don't work, if people feel that they're not working for them, they have the power to change it at the next election.
I agree with that, Stacy. Thank you
so
very much.
So I just want to make that clear.
That's good. Okay, so let's go to the easy one first, the town budget. Do either of you have any, or the budget committee have any issues with the town budget as presented, which is what? Is it 12 million or 14 million?
$14 million and change, without counting the warrant articles. The town operating budget I support with reservations, but I support it. I do have a suggestion that they pass the $8.8 million bond issue for the new police station for a very simple reason. Anyone who has walked through that police station, and I talked to the police chief yesterday before this session, And he said there's been 18 people outside of the budget committee and members of the town staff and so forth who have come through and looked at it. And I believe he was of the opinion that almost all of them were in agreement that they need a new police station. That building was built in 1989. It is obsolete, and it is one way dangerous because a prisoner could potentially get into the main building and out the door before they could be stopped. That's a danger.
So you endorsed it for this year?
For the
and
8.8
Stacy, do you
million.
too?
I do not, actually.
Okay.
I know that we need a new police station. We need improvements very badly. I'm not convinced that this is the year, though. I've had too many voters who have just been so devastated and hurt by the way the assessments went this year, and their taxes have gone up, and I just don't think we can afford it. I think we need it, but I think there's alternatives that we haven't looked at. And I mean, I foresee that we're going to lose a grocery store within the next 2 years, is my prediction.
Really?
I don't think this community can support
you think
four of them.
My favorite store, Shaw's, is going?
It's my favorite too, and I've been in there too often lately where there's like nobody, and there's no employees either to speak of. So I'm concerned. I mean, that might make a really nice central location for a new police station. So things like that I think we need to look at alternatives. Yes, it needs some repairs, so let's take some money out of our town-owned budget, municipal budget to do some of those repairs, and hopefully, we can have something that can at least get us by till we come up with something else. I know it's needed. I just don't think this is the year, or this is necessarily the only route we have to take care of it.
You had an overall, Jim, I assume that's your issue with it, but I think, Stacy, you have an issue with the town budget as well with the inspectors. Is that right?
Well,
I mean,
it kind of
I'm
we
picking
got
up
all
a scab here.
we got all these new employees all of a sudden that I really believe, and though they say this is not the case,
Right.
I really believe that our inspector who's going to be inspecting, managing the inspections that the the fire chiefs are actually doing, it was hired when they thought that they could ban short-term rentals, and they were going to enforce that.
Yep.
And because Paul D said at one of our meetings, he said to us, and if I said, well, what if you lose in court? What's this person supposed to do? He said, well, then we will have inspection programs, and they will be, looking over that. And I'm like, inspection programs? We've never inspected, residential before, unless people have requested it. Like when they're building a new building, sometimes they'll have.
But they are starting inspections on new home construction now, right?
They're talking about it.
Construction has always been inspected, I believe.
No,
you can, but it's not
can.
required.
No.
Bottom line on that, though, I will put on a different hat here for a minute. As the commander of the American Legion post here in North Conway, I had to spend $7,700 to bring my house up to code because we have one tenant in that house, and because of that, I would have to bring that house up to code. It cost me $7,700, and Pope did the work. I'm not advocating Pope. I'm just saying that's how much it cost to have Pope do it.
Yeah. All right.
And
Good.
so that's a big part of it is, I'm not saying that I don't believe in safety inspections, but I also believe that, before people do something wrong, they shouldn't be penalized with these big expenses to register their homes and get work done that maybe because, they were before certain code.
So you're against the inspection program?
I am.
Okay.
I mean,
what about just basic life safety issues, though? I mean, these are people who are renting to, it's not just yourself, but these are obviously people who are renting to the public, theoretically, and long-term or short-term. You don't...
The insurance companies do a pretty good job of inspecting on a lot of the similar items that the town is talking about. I think there could be a program if the a tenant could report somebody, or even if a short-term tenant could report if they think there's a serious problem, or when follow up on our building permits. If somebody adds an extra bedroom or an extra bath, is it meeting their septic system? And do it then.
So,
not everybody has to be.
So bottom line, Stacy, you and I are in agreement regarding the inspection program. We really are. I'm against it purely from a cost factor to the owner,
and then the tenants.
than the tenant, because of course, as an owner, I will raise the rate of the rent to cover a long-term cost of the cost of the $7,700 plus anything that goes forward in the future. The $25 every 3 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Something like that.
okay, well, and just to remind voters and viewers is that there is a warrant article for the inspections on the town warrant, even though the town is already doing the inspections. And we talked to Paul D the other day, and so we won't get into what happens if it fails, and then a selectman will have to look at that. But there is for people who are watching this and you've listened to Stacy and you, Jim, you can vote on it.
One thing I would suggest to folks, if you are in disagreement with this, vote against it and then put the pressure on the select board, because the select board should be listening to the legislative body of the town and when they're doing this sort of thing. If the legislative body says convincingly that they don't want the inspection program, then the select board should back off their own program itself.
Okay, so let's go, well said, let's go to the school budget. And gosh, talk about getting in the weeds. I'm going to try to review this really quickly, is that the voters are going to be facing a default budget, the school board's budget, which is about $40 million, and what's called a default budget, which is about $39 million, a little over that. So this time they'll have a choice between a $40 million and a $39 million budget, which is rare. Usually the default budget and the school budget are the same. If you add in the special articles, the school budget is about $40 million, which is actually the school operating budget is down a little bit. The school board says it's down 1% or 1.5%, but that doesn't, the reason why it's down is because we retired a $1.9 million bond the last year for the new school. Then you add on the special articles for maintenance and union contracts and all that, and the overall budget, including the operating, is about $43 million.
That's correct.
And that represents about, I think, about a 6% increase from last year. Are we in that range?
6.5.
Yeah.
6.5. Okay. So I guess we'll start off with this question, and that is the budget committee floated, when you guys were meeting, you floated ideas, but at the end of the day, you asked the school board to come up with cuts of $2 million, but you never actually voted on, the budget committee never voted on cuts.
At that point.
At that point, right? So when you went to the deliberative, there was nothing on the table from the budget committee that was less than the school board's budget.
Well,
We voted on them, but they didn't pass.
right.
You voted
we
on it
we
within the
voted
budget
for a
committee.
$700,000 decrease, which was proposed by me.
At the budget committee level? Or
Yes.
Okay.
And then and that did not pass. And then we have that to $300,000. That didn't pass because the discussion was, let's just go with the default budgets, vote down the school budget and make them go with the default budget, and that will get us to the 1.2 million that we had hoped they would cut.
All right, is that?
The 1.2 million goes back to last year when I represented a $1.2 million cut to the budget. And the argument from that school board and the school administration last year was that a $1.2 million cut would result in the immediate closure of a school. That same argument has been brought back if they go to the default budget this year, which is $1.1 million less than the operating budget, would immediately cause them to have to close a school within the next
For the next school year.
School year.
And it's already been decided pretty much, unless the school board changes that, they would close that school in 2025. Right?
That is what the current school board has agreed to do.
Right.
Correct.
So I guess one question related to that is that if the default budget is adopted by the town, the voters, and the school board is saying, oh, now we have to close the school because of that,
a year
do you agree
early.
with that, or do you think the 1.1 million could come out of the operating budget? Stacy?
I think it could come out of the operating
where?
budget. Just there's lots of little places when you go and there's some replication of duties. That we must have in the safety category at the high school. There must be there's counselors, there's safety officer, there's a police officer. We have a huge amount. I mean, I think that could be brought down a bit. You know, and there, if you look at each department and area, there is room. How do they bring back $3 million to the town if there isn't room?
Well,
It wasn't all in special ed.
No, but
you
they
know.
just said they couldn't fill the positions. They just
And
couldn't
that
hire.
is the same
So do they
situation
need
they're
those
facing
positions?
today.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
That is the same position they're facing today. They cannot fill the positions that they have on the books. If you can't fill the positions that you have on the books by a certain date, those positions should be zeroed out for the current year. And that money would then revert to unexpended general fund, and that could be returned to the taxpayer. So bottom line, from my perspective, I'll give them $1.9 million in a special education argument from last year's 3.4 that they returned. But that meant that $1.5 million of what they returned had nothing to do with special education. It came out of the personnel cost, which is 80% of the school board budget.
but it came out of personnel costs of people they tried to hire, but they couldn't, like
if
teachers.
you can't hire them, it's like any other business. If you can't hire them, you work around it.
If you look at the openings, most of them are not teachers. Most of them are support staff, and
Exactly.
and then
Administrative
like
people.
custodian type.
But the question is that it's one thing if you can't fill them. The other question is whether you need them. Like, how do we know we don't? I mean, we're just sitting, or you guys looked at the budget, so you're suggesting that we don't need them.
possibly.
I would suggest that a significant number of what they are not being able to fill are actually not necessary to current operations.
All right, so the both of you, and I assume the whole budget committee, never really took a vote on it, right? But did you vote on the default budget? Where does the budget committee stand on the school board budget? I guess that's the latest vote that the budget committee took.
They voted to accept the default budget from the school,
They voted to defeat the operating budget.
but they voted to the operating budget down with no change to the dollar amount. There was no, let's reduce it by
Right.
1.2, let's reduce it by
And
700,000.
that
We
was
tried to do that, but it voted in the
But
down.
I think, and I'm going to interrupt 1 second, Jim, but I think one reason why the budget committee got kind of stuck in what you're going to cut is that you knew there was already a default budget with 1.1 million there to vote on, right? So that was,
That plus every time we've cut the budget in the last few years from the school, people have come into the delivery and brought it right back up.
is that a reason, Jim, that literally you guys didn't bring it up at the deliberative because you know it's going to be turned back? I mean, Bill Marvel fell into the prongs at the deliberative when he tried to bring up discussion about the humanities.
The issue on cutting the budget gets to the point of where you look at who comes to the various sessions, and it's an interest group, and you know they may call it a community, they may call it whatever they wish, but there's an interest group of people who come to the deliberative session for the school district, and their job, as they see it, is to preserve the 5 schools. Now the 5 schools are, in general terms, got too many seats for the number of students they have. The total seat number is 2,400, and there's 1,600 students at the most in the schools. That tells me and anyone else looking at the budget that you could easily afford to consolidate and reduce the number of schools without having any impact on the education. As Randy Davidson so eloquently says, a school does not educate a person. The teacher educates the person. We are not against education. We're against excess infrastructure, which we do not see will ever be necessary again in our lifetimes.
All right. So the bottom line on that is that the school budget, the budget committee did not recommend a specific cut. Even if you had recommended one at the deliberative, it would have been
South.
restored anyway.
Right.
So your position is that you're recommending that people support the default budget.
That's what the board recommends. Not all of it was not a across the board.
But
vote.
it was a substantial majority of the budget committee saying that support the default budget and let the people who are tasked to deal with that budget come up with the way they have to deal with it. In the business of administration at the federal level, the budget is proposed, it goes out to the various agencies. They put their paperwork together and they ship it back to the Congress. The Congress does its thing. We are the equivalent of a legislative committee under RSA 32 for the town. We look at it and say, well, we feel that this is too high and we would recommend a reduction. We're not going to specify where to reduce because we are not the subject matter experts in what you need to educate. We are experts, we believe, in what you need to cut.
Okay, that's fair enough. We only have 4 or 5 minutes left, and I know, Jim, you wanted to talk about Article 10.
Article
so if you
10.
can say that so that we all can understand it.
Okay, Article 10, currently the school board can retain 2.5% of their total budget. That's about $450,000. They are recommending in Article 10 a change to up that to 5%, which would allow them to retain about $850,000 to $900,000 in funds to spend for emergencies. Under the current rules, they have to come to the Budget Committee and the DRA under RSA 32 to do that, to spend that 2.5%. The new requirement or new proposal is only requiring a public hearing, no DRA or Budget Committee oversight, no independent oversight other than what is done at the public hearing. And public hearings have no enforcement capability. They can listen to what the public has to say and say, thank you very much, and then do whatever the heck they wish. And that is a concern of mine.
So is your biggest concern that you're raising it $2.5 million to 5?
2.5,
2.5 to 5
percent to 5%.
I'm sorry, the percent or the oversight or both?
Both.
All right, but the other thing is and I don't know if you can, but the school board has never used that money though. It's sort of a theoretical money, right?
It is a theoretical money, but if it's a theoretical construct today, why do you need to raise it another 2.5%? That's my concern.
All right, Stacy, what do you think about that?
And that's what he just said is what my concern too. It's like they keep saying, well, we've never kept it. We keep giving all the money back to the town to, for the next year's tax rate. And it's like, well, that's all. Then why do you need to raise it? I mean, if it's something you haven't used ever, then why does it have to be a greater amount? I think their concept behind it, and I may be wrong on this, but I think I recall something about, our infrastructure costs, our repair costs are growing so exponentially right now that they're looking for something in the, to keep on hand so that they can cover those. I mean, there are funds, kept back for repairs and such, for, capital funds and such like that. But the reality is, there's a lot of infrastructure there, and if things could go wrong, I mean, I get where you have concern. I mean, I don't think a lot of people realize that Conway Elementary School was less than a foot away from being flooded during the December storms.
Right, so that would be an example. So with only a couple minutes left,
Right.
Are we good with that? Go ahead.
I would like to add just one other point.
Yeah.
One of the things that is a concern to several members of the Budget Committee, not myself or Stacy, I don't believe, but I have heard from several other members, and not Bill Marvel, that one of the reasons they're concerned about this 5%, the increase to 5%, is that they cannot trust the school board / administration in this area. And that is an issue that has to be addressed long term, but something that everyone should be aware of. Some folks are concerned that they will do exactly what they wish without any oversight capability at all. If there is an emergency under RSA 32, there's a way to have an emergency funding. You just come to the Budget Committee and say, hey, we have this roof that's falling apart at Kennett Middle School. Any Budget Committee worth its salt is not going to say, we're going to let the roof fall apart and the heck with the.
So you don't need, you're saying you don't need the $5 million. You don't need it because
you don't need the
5%.
Keep it at the 2.5, which they never have spent, and don't.
All right, are there any other, all the special articles, and we're basically out of time, but any other, there's a bunch of special articles, union contracts, maintenance, is there anything out in there, the school special articles that stands out that you don't support?
Oh, I don't know, because I do support the union contract because our custodians, bus drivers and such are fairly lowly paid compared to the state. I think they need a raise.
I would, nothing else with the school, but if I could go back for just a moment to the town.
Sure.
I've heard a lot of noise about the fact that there are 75 warrant articles for town voters to vote on. That's democracy in action, folks.
Right.
That's the way it works. Don't turn down that capability oversight. Two that are mostly concerning. I've already discussed the police warrant article, bonding. The other one is Article 64, where Settlers Green wants the town to take over
Oh, yeah.
common court and other things. I am totally against that. If they want to do that, bring it up to town standards and then bring it to us. Don't ask us to do it for you.
Okay, and I think, Stacy, you actually agree with that, right?
I do.
Okay, very good. Well, and regarding the, I'm going to put one last plug in for the charter, Jim, because since you brought up this long ballot, because what the charter would do was take some of those nonprofits and condense them, and like all those capital reserve things, and like there are 15 articles in there that are basically definitions from the planning board, and people just go check, 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 because they don't really understand them. So part of what we're doing with the Charter Commission is to reduce the ballot to it makes more sense, and hopefully you get more people involved. Right, so Jim, thanks again for supporting the Charter Commission, and that's all the time we have, so I think I'm going to have to cut you off before you can respond. Jim, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mark, for cutting me off before I could respond.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, okay.